Do you have your transmission that shifts really badly in the summertime? This is a 1999 and it has a 4-speed automatic transmission, which means that when you drive in town, which is usually speed limits of 45 miles an hour, the torque converter never locks, and when the temperature is over 110 degrees, this transmission will definitely overheat. I've had this issue with both this 1999 and the 1998, where the transmissions just shift really badly. They started slamming into every time they shift. So I went ahead and put a cooler from an XC90 on my 98, and ever since I've done that, it's never shifted better. So we're going to go ahead and install one on my 1999. Now this cooler is from a 2.5 liter XC90, so the 5-cylinder gas-powered XC90. And this should just be a plug-and-play. Now if you look at the connectors at the end of this, this is not focusing, but they are the same than they are on this 1999. But if you have a 98, then they're not. And you're gonna have, what I did with my 1998 is I didn't take this line, but I took a line off of a 2.9 liter, and the 2.9 liter XC90s, which has the 4-speed GM garbage transmission, will have this identical line, and this is the line that goes from the top of the radiator down to the cooler, and then this goes back to the transmission. But if you get one of these off of 2.9, this line is not going to work. It's going to be different. What I want to do here is that this is just a plug and play, and I don't need to use any barbed connectors or cut any lines, and we're going to see how that's going to go for this car. It went very well for my 1998, where I just used this hose from a 2.5 liter XC90, and I only had to use one barbed connector. I'm hoping that with this, I'm not going to have to use any barbed connector, but we're going to figure that out. Now we're going to run this how it's supposed to be. If you can find an OEM cooler for the... oh, there's a plane going by. Now, if you could find an OEM cooler for these P80 Sashi cars, they do exist, but they are all... they're not too much smaller than the XC90 cooler, but you might say that this cooler is a little bit too big for this car, and that, I think, depends where you live and how you drive. Where I am here in the summertime, it can hit 115 degrees and everything is overheating. So to me, this is not too big for this car. Now we're going to install it right behind the air guide, right here. So we're going to take the air guide off to put it in. Now there's some people that put it in different positions, and I think that's kind of up to you. I'm going to put it down below because I think that's where there's the most room to put it. Now this car does have a DO88 radiator, so we're going to see how much space that took, because on my 1998 it just has the OEM radiator and it fit down there no problem. Now something you also need, you're going to need some spacers. It's a little bit of hardware from the hardware store to space out about 2 inches, and we're going to see if we need more or less than that when I get down there. Alright, here we go under the car. The camera's really dark again. But here's the DO88 radiator, and here I have a nut which goes on the back of it, and that's because this is a DO88 radiator. With the OEM radiator, you're not going to have a nut back here. You could just unscrew the front bolt and it'll be perfectly fine. But what we're going to do is we're going to use much longer bolts and extensions to install the cooler right in front of the heat exchanger here. I believe that's what it's called for the air conditioning. But first thing here is we need to clean the cooler we got from the junkyard, because almost all the XC90s that are in the junkyard, they're in there because their transmissions went out. so you do need to clean it pretty well. I'm going to use mass airflow sensor cleaner. Hopefully that will get everything out. You also have to take the battery out and the battery tray so that you can get to this top line here that bolts on to the top of the transmission pan. Alright, so I just untighten that bolt there. Well, it's not the bolt, it's what's holding this top line here. As you can see, I had to put a counter hold on it. That thing was really tight. So far, I've never had to put a counter hold on one of these. I suppose it's because this car doesn't have any rust on it at all. So it was really stuck on there. So the way I counter holded it here, just have a 22mm wrench, a rod, and then I tied a electrical cord around it to hold it. Alright, so now I have drilled a little hole in the bracket on this side and the other side. The one on the other side, I did flatten it out. It's supposed to have a curve to it. Made it perfectly flat and drilled a hole through it. These little spacers are working great. This cooler should be able to handle 100-mile-an-hour wind. No problem. So now the next thing is you need to cut the excess of the brackets because this is going to get in the way of the air guide. And then once that's done, then you can go ahead and connect the oil lines. Could just barely see it down there. And once the air guide is on, you can't even tell it's there. Unfortunately, you can kind of tell it's a little crooked. I did that by mistake. I mean, I can maybe re-drill another hole, but I don't think that will. I think it'll be fine like this. I'm going to use a Dremel, a little cutting tool. This is aluminum, so it should cut pretty easily. Then we're also going to have to cut a little piece out of the air guide for it to allow for the oil cooler lines to go through. Okay, so now I cut both brackets on either side. Make sure no aluminum gets in those ports. That would not be very good. Now I did clean this cooler out as best as I can. So now we could go ahead and install the coolant. The cooler lines. I already have one down here. Gotta figure out which one I'm going to put on the top and which one I'm going to put on the bottom. Okay, so one of the lines, one line goes over here, and the other line's supposed to go up above here, but this hose here is not long enough to go down below. So we're going to keep this hose up here, which is the outlet coming out of the transmission. And we're going to connect from the bottom hose, which is the hose from the cooler from the XC90 that's supposed to come to the top. What I went ahead and did is I just cut this off with the Dremel so that I can have them both sides like this, and I went ahead and bought some new line. So what I did with my 98 is that I actually connected two hoses together with a barbed connector so that it would be able to have enough length and just wrap around and connect to the bottom. But here I'm trying to avoid using an additional barbed connector because that has a good chance that it's going to leak at some point. So this is why I'm doing it this way. And also it'll look more OEM. Alright, so now I have the line down here, which this was the line that originally is supposed to come from the top and go to the bottom when it's on an XC90. But now, and this is not focused, there we go. Now, fluid's going to come out through here and go through my brand new transmission oil cooler line that I just connected onto it and make a nice loop around and go to the oil cooler. Now the line I used is this one here. It's not working. Transmission oil cooler hose. And there's the size, 3/8 inches. So now I just need to tighten this line on the top of the transmission, and this should look all OEM. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some hose I have here laying around, which is too small so I can't use it for anything. I'm going to cut it and put it above any of the parts of hoses that look like might be touching something. At the moment, nothing is touching anything, but wherever I think it might come in contact, I'm gonna just put a little bit of hose over it just to make sure it can't get a hole. Okay, so now I have everything reconnected. Everything's really close, but nothing is touching. And now, this is very sturdy. You're gonna need to add about 0.6 quarts to the car, and then just top it off if it needs a little bit more. I had to add 0.6, I think it was 0.6 or 0.7 quarts into my 98, and it'll probably be the same on this car. I'm going to add 0.5 before I start it, and then just check, make sure nothing's leaking. Then obviously the car has to be running and at level for you to check the level. Now because there's the battery tray here, I also put a little hose, you can do a little blue hose there on top of the new transmission line from the junkyard, just to make sure that it's not going to rub. Now, it doesn't seem to touch, but just want to make sure. Alright, so now we can start the car. As you can see, it's a nice, cool 103 degrees. And just check for leaks. This car never likes getting the battery disconnected. One thing, the line that attaches on the top of the oil pan that you got from the junkyard, that one, for some reason, I did not have an issue with this on my 98, but it was preventing me from putting it into park all the way. Now, the car was in park, but you had to push it all the way into park to get it in. And so what you need to do to fix this is to come up here and grab it and pull it down until you bent it down. It doesn't need to be bent that much, but until you bent it down just enough so that you can properly get your car into park. So now, for the ear guide, you have to cut this off because this is in the way of the new oil cooler lines. Okay, got the air guide installed. You can barely, well, you can't see it at all actually from this thing. You gotta get pretty close to be able to see it. So that's all done now. I left it run for 10 minutes, didn't see any leaks. Now I just need to take it for a little drive, which I will probably do much later. Otherwise, this should keep the transmission a lot cooler and much happier. And don't forget to double check your fluid level because it's going to be way too low.